to 5 tips and tricks to launching your career virtually. I'm Tim Krenz, and I get the awesome opportunity to share with you some of these tips and tricks. It's a very challenging time for a lot of students, for each of you looking for internship, new grad roles, and so I'm here with Angie to walk you through some of those tips. So with that, let's jump right into the agenda. So we'll first start with a quick welcome. I'll share a bit about my role. We'll have Angie, my co-host, share a bit about her role, and then we'll actually want to hear from each of you. So we'll actually have a prompt for each of you to share a bit about your background using the chat feature. We'll then jump into a bit about NI. So some of you maybe have heard of NI before, some of you haven't. So we'll talk a bit about who we are and what we do, and then we'll get into the tips and tricks. And so we've got 5 that we want to share with you as each of you are looking to launch your careers. And then at the end, we'll wrap up with some questions and advice. So we'll basically open it up to everyone for questions that you have for us. We'll share a bit about our advice for each of you. And then we have some action items for each of you. We are still hiring at NI. We've got a couple of new grad and intern positions. And so we'll talk about how to be considered for each of those. All right. So a bit more about our team. So like I said, Tim Krenz, and I work on our recruiting team. And I largely focus on our new grad and intern recruiting efforts. I've been at NI for a little over 3 years, and I always share that I really have the best job. I mean, I joke that despite what my parents think, traveling to different colleges, hanging out with college students, it is a real job. And I do get paid. It's not volunteer. But that's a bit about my role. Angie, you want to share a bit about your background?
Yeah, Tim, thank you so much. Well, first of all, thank you everybody for being able to join us today, for being able and wanted to invest your time with us today. So thank you for that. And I agree with, what Tim said. My name is Angie, and I, just, think that definitely this is the best job ever, certainly. So I have been working for NI almost for 10 years already, and has been a great journey for me. So part of my job as well, in my role, is to be able to share with the students with different universities in Costa Rica, in Mexico, and some other countries, and in the US as well. So it's a real pleasure for sure.
Awesome. Thanks, Angie. All right. So we shared a bit about who we are. Now we want to hear from each of you. So use the chat feature and chat in a bit about your background. So I'd love to hear from each of you, your name, your major, your grad year, and areas of interest. Maybe you're interested in hardware development, software engineering, mechanical engineering. I want to hear why you decided to join this workshop. So what kind of prompted your interest in connecting with us at NI? And then I love fun facts, and especially as we're all virtual, sometimes these presentations can feel like we're talking at you. So I want to make it fun. And I'd love to hear from each of you a movie or a TV show, but for the sake of inclusivity, if you don't watch movies or TV, it can be a book maybe, that you just haven't seen or read that you feel like everyone else on the planet has. And I will be vulnerable. I'll go first. The movie and TV show that I just haven't seen that I feel like everyone else has is the Avengers movies. I've never seen those. I only know of Thanos because of the memes online. That's the only reason. So like I said, use the chat feature and go ahead and chat in a bit about your background, areas of interest. Really want to hear why you decided to join this workshop. And then let's make it fun. Use the chat feature to chat in a movie or a TV show that you just haven't seen. All right. So while each of you are chatting in a bit about your background, making this super interactive, we'll move on to a bit about NI. So at NI, when I talk with students about really who we are and what we do, I always like to put it into simple terms. Our purpose at NI is to engineer ambitiously and help our customers tackle some of the most important and complex engineering challenges that exist. And we do that through our mission, which is all about helping engineers and enterprises accelerate productivity, innovation, and discovery using our systems. So to put it simply, we're an expert connector at NI, connecting our customers with the right engineering solutions that they need. Now, how we do that, it's through a few ways. It's through our products. We make both hardware and software products. It's through systems. We partner with our customers in customized test systems, measurement systems, product and data analytics systems. And then we do it through our services. We provide engineering consultative services for our customers. So like I said, our purpose at NI is to really help our customers tackle their engineering challenges. Now, of course, that's pretty broad. If you think about customers that need help tackling engineering challenges, it spans across a variety of different industries in almost every sector that you can think of. But we really hone in and specialize in a few different sectors and industries. And we, in fact, at NI have structured business units that service and provide value to specific industries. And I want to walk you through each of them. So we really have four that we specialize and focus on. The first is semiconductors. So customers that make semiconductors, they'll leverage our products, they'll leverage our systems and services to make sure their semiconductors are market ready. Another business unit, a market that we serve, is automotive and transportation. That's a big, big marketplace for us at NI, as automotive and transportation companies work to create more sustainable vehicles and fully autonomous vehicles as well. The next piece, the next business unit and market we serve, it's all about aerospace and defense. So companies looking to launch specific planes and things like that. And then the last is what we call our portfolio business unit, which is really a mix of different industries. It includes academia, wireless research, and it captures some of the industries that span across a variety of different sectors. Now, before we get into those 5 tips and tricks, I want to talk a bit about our culture. And our culture at NI is really rooted in our core values. And so, Angie, I want to hand it over to you to talk a bit about how you view our core values and how you view our culture.
Well, thank you so much. Definitely, culture is super important whenever you are thinking to be part of any company. And for us, our culture is, one of the most important parts, because as Tim said, it's really based on our values. And those are our values: be bold, be kind, and be connected. And definitely one of the things that I can share with you is that doesn't matter the position that you are at NI and in which side you are working for, you can definitely live those values. So I'm going to share how can I, how am I applying those values right now? You can have a better idea. So first one, be bold. What it means to me is basically to be able to go out of my, comfort zone, basically, and try to be every time, better. Try to connect, get in touch with the people that I know that can give me and add some value, for example, and make the right questions to the right people. So that is one of the things that, it's helping me to be bold. Be kind, because definitely in every type of relationship and connections that we have, doesn't matter if it is with a candidate, for example, in my case, because I work in recruiting, or with one of the managers, or with one of our customers, we really want to have kind relationships. And whatever we say, we want to say it in a kind way. And be connectors, because definitely that is what we do. That is what we are doing right now with you. We are trying to connect with you so that you can learn about us and that you can eventually create a relationship with us and have the possibility to be part of this great company. So we, every day, in every interaction that we have, we apply those 3 values. And this is super important, because someone that can be a really good cultural fit will be someone that can embrace those values, and that maybe it's already living based on those values too.
Awesome. Thanks, Angie. A few final notes before we jump into those 5 tips and tricks. Make sure to be active in the chat. I've already seen lots of activity, which is awesome. A lot of you, it sounds like you need to watch Game of Thrones, minus the last season. So be active in the chat. If you got questions, go ahead and chat them in. If you got thoughts, feedback, chat it in. And please stay muted up until the end where we'll ask if you got questions, go ahead and unmute yourselves. And then, like I said, if you got questions, if you got thoughts, if you got feedback, go ahead and chat them in. So let's move to those 5 tips and tricks. All right, before we do, the quick caveat, the quick note here is that what we're about to share, none of it is rocket science, but I mentioned this at the top, but because this is such a challenging time as it relates to finding a career and everyone being virtual, it's really important that you set yourself up for success as you're engaging with employers and trying to find that right internship or new grad spot. So the first thing, I want to talk about recruiting events. These recruiting events, I want you to be prepared. So I don't mean be prepared for recruiting events in that you have your resume polished, you've done research on the company. A lot of that stuff should be given. What I'm speaking of is at these virtual recruiting events, especially virtual career fairs or events where you're going to be talking to multiple recruiters, time is scarce. We know that. And so I want each of you to be ready to go and know what positions each employer is hiring for. I also want you to make sure prior to the event that you meet the requirements, you meet the major requirements, you meet the work authorization requirements. And I also want you to make sure that you have your application already submitted. So before these screening recruiting events, I want you to be able to do all 3 of those because again, like I said, time is scarce. You don't have that much time to connect with the recruiters. Next thing, I want you to focus on spending the time discussing the role and getting answers to your questions. An example could be, so I learned a lot about your company, its mission, and how you work to provide value to your customers. I already applied to XYZ position. Can you tell me more about the position, what the position entails? And if they don't know, ask them about, their experience as a whole. In some cases, you'll talk about a recruiter that doesn't work in a particular area. So ask them about the larger intern and new grad experience as well. The last thing before I hand it over to Angie to the next tip is it's critical to ask the representative to share your info with the right recruiter. So recruiters like me, we own specific positions. And if you're connecting with a recruiter who isn't necessarily owning that particular role, I want to encourage you to say something to the effect of, hey, I've already applied online. Can you connect me with the right recruiter on LinkedIn? Or since I've already applied, can I have your email so I can share your resume with the right recruiter? So all things to think about as you're approaching some of these virtual recruiting events. Time is scarce, want you to be prepared, and then ask for actionable next steps in getting connected with the right recruiter. Angie?
All right, so thank you, Tim. Really tied to what Tim just mentioned, it is important to be prepared. And one of the steps to be prepared is actually to really carefully read the job descriptions, okay? And try to understand which are those requirements to make sure that you accomplish with those requirements, and eventually which are going to be the responsibilities that you will have. The reason why is because first you want to make sure that you could be a really good fit and that you will have more possibilities to get, that someone calls you back to do an interview, of course. Then secondly, because it's important that you can, be strategic and that you can have already in mind some of the ideas, some of the examples that can give you the possibility to show the recruiter, for example, that you have the potential, that you have developed some skills and competences that are going to be really good for this position. So think on those examples. So if, for example, says like, okay, you need to have really good time management. Okay, so think on one way in how you usually handle your time. And it is really important to also bring to your mind examples of things that already happened to you. So here it's important that we can have and share one of the techniques that is called a STAR technique. And this STAR technique, it's super interesting and it's super easy to apply. So always, if you try to use this way, you are going to make sure that you are giving a really complete answer and that you are covering all the important things that the recruiter wants to hear. So if, for example, you are talking, as I said, about time management, then you can mention a situation, a moment in which you were handling different things at the same time. Then T means like, okay, where were the tasks that you had at that moment? Then A, which were the actions that you took at that moment? And then R, which were the results? So if you have that in your mind, I can bet you that you are gonna provide really good answers to the recruiter.
Mm-hmm. And echoing what Angie shared, just going back to, this tip about building your story in interviews. Most companies, if they're, setting themselves up for success, they'll be really descriptive in their job descriptions on what they look for and skill sets and requirements. So as you're applying for a particular position, whether or not you're in an interview or simply engaging with a recruiter for a particular opening, I want you to make sure that you have your arsenal of stories ready to go that map the job description. Like Angie said, if a job description says something to the effect of, you have to be great at time management. You want to make sure you have a specific example of a time where you managed your time efficiently. If the job description says they're looking for someone who has a great customer focus and places value on customer service, I want you to start thinking of maybe an internship or part-time job or an experience where you provided that excellent customer service. And so really start to think through, what is the job description asking for and how can I take that and start building my stories to be able to map to them. And like Angie said, the STAR method is one of the best ways to effectively answer some of those really tough questions that are behavioral questions, like tell me about a time you've done this, tell me about a time you exemplified this trait. So make sure to use the STAR method for those. Let's move on to tip number 3. So this is all about keeping learning and really focus on having a growth mindset. And the reality is a lot of internships last year, they were canceled, and a lot of intern programs this summer haven't fully recovered. I know at NI, we're fortunate enough that last summer we didn't cancel our program. We didn't cancel any intern offers. We moved it virtual. It'll be a virtual experience this year. But some companies don't have the ability to do that. And so some of you on the call maybe had an internship lined up, or maybe you're still looking for an internship this summer and there's just not as many employers looking for interns because of the pandemic. So what I want to encourage each of you to do is think through how you can really beef up your resume without having that formal internship experience. So experience is super important, but I also want each of you to think about how you can portray knowledge and skill sets that you've gained from things outside of a formal internship on your resume. And I want you to be able to focus on having that growth mindset and continuing to learn and get involved. And I always recommend for students that maybe haven't had a formal internship yet, think about side projects or involvement in student organizations or even part-time work that you can leverage and share on your resume, and think through ways that it can be applied to a particular position that you're interested in. So for example, a part-time job at a restaurant, there are a lot of skill sets that you develop that can be applied to an internship setting. So I want you to be creative and think through, how can I take some of the experiences that each of you have had and beef up your resume and continue to have that growth mindset. And additionally, of course, like I said, make sure to highlight these on your resume and paint the picture. I always encourage students, if you're working part-time and isn't necessarily related to your major or what you want to do long term, I still think it's valuable for you to be able to portray that and share that on your resume. Just make sure it maps to the positions that you're applying for. Angie, you want to chat a bit about leveraging your network?
Yes. But before I go to this one, Tim, I will add something to what you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Sometimes, people ask like, hey, should I add this, time when I work at the restaurant, as you mentioned? And the answer is yes, please do, because definitely then everything that, can show that you have developed some skills, that you have developed some competences, those are going to be good points, to be able to show to the recruiter. And remember, it's not what you say, is how you say it and how you frame that, and that you explain that you gain some experience. So for example, if you work as a cashier, let's say, so you had to pay a lot of attention to details. You had to have really good, customer skills. And then perhaps those are skills that we are looking in one of the, positions that we have open. So please add that information on the resume. And then always, as Tim said, have some ideas on how to share all the competences that you were able to develop through those type of works.
And get creative. Like Andrew said, as someone who works as, a cashier at a store, some of the skill sets that are developed in working in a role like that can be applied to literally any setting in a professional environment. So be creative in taking some of the experiences that you've had as internships have been canceled and as everyone's been affected by this pandemic, and keep learning and keep growing and beef up your resume.
Exactly.
All right.
So this is another really, really important thing. So it's important that you can create a good network, friends, families, colleagues that can share that, share with you that there are some open positions in which you could be a really good fit, or that can actually help you connect you with someone else that is providing a really good position. So start building your network. It's super important. Use LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a great tool, but it's super important that you have that updated as well, because happens that sometimes you create your profile, you added the information, for example, there, but you never update it. So then, remember that people don't, and talking about recruiters, we don't use LinkedIn only to look for your profile when you apply directly. We also do look for, passive candidates, which means that if you don't have your, resume updated there, then perhaps you're going to lose some opportunities. So remember to keep that updated. And then you can eventually use that tool to start posting to those positions, to be able to read out to the job descriptions and make sure what is there on the market. What are those positions that you really are looking for, and that could be a good fit for you. And then also it's going to give you the possibility to add followers, and to be following some companies, some third parties, and that is going to help you expand your connections as well. So use that type of tools that are super important.
Yeah. And I love this point, especially as it relates to LinkedIn, because a lot of students, they think LinkedIn is really just for, making sure it's updated. It's another resume, but it's so much more than that. And students can really leverage the LinkedIn community to identify open intern and new grad positions. And so make sure to start posting, leverage your experiences, post your content, projects that you've worked on, if you're GitHub, if you are a computer science student or computer engineering. And you can also use the search functionality to search for people who are maybe a part of the same community that you're a part of. So say, for example, you're part of the NSBE chapter at UTSA. You can actually search and see people who are a part of the larger NSBE community and connect with them and leverage them as a part of your larger network. So get creative with how you use LinkedIn to find that internship and new grad role and launch your career.
Tim, just to close this one, also
Mhm.
when you follow some companies, for example, then and you kind of tag some of the possible positions. Whenever those
Mhm.
positions comes, on the net, the system basically LinkedIn is going to show you or give you an alarm, alert. Hey, this
Mhm.
is the position is open, so you will be able to easily go through the job description and the position and then see if could be a good moment for you to apply.
Mhm.
So it is important to pay
Mhm.
attention to that as well.
Yep. So there's only value being gained when you follow an employer and get notified when they have specific openings. And that way you can be maybe the first candidate or first applicant. So I love that idea, Angie. All right. Last tip is all about onboarding. And if you've noticed through tips 1 to 5, we've kind of gone through, what a selection process may look like. Being prepared at recruiting events, building your arsenal, as it relates to interviewing, and making sure you have great stories for those tough behavioral questions, into leveraging your network, beefing up your resume as experiences are altered because of the pandemic. And then the last tip we have is all about onboarding. So if you followed some of the tips and tricks we discussed earlier, hopefully it can get you to a place where you've accepted an internship, or if you've accepted a new grad opportunity for full time. A lot of companies, and I included, are continuing to onboard new hires completely virtually, and that's going to continue through the summer. So this semester, graduates are actually going to be onboarding this summer virtually at NI, and it creates a lot of interesting challenges, onboarding and getting acclimated when it's completely virtual. So I want each of you to focus on a few things. First thing, make sure that you're equipped to handle and you're prepared and ready to go for a virtual onboarding experience. Do that through prioritizing the tools that you need to collaborate virtually. Some companies use Slack chat, some use Microsoft Teams. That's what we use at NI. Make sure you identify what collaboration tool they use early on and find the resources and the training needed to get ramped up as soon as possible. Because if you don't, collaboration and engagement is going to be really, really difficult. Next thing, make sure to build in time to get to know people on your team. And some companies, they do this for you, but some of them don't. You actually have to be proactive in setting up additional meetings with your team members, with different mentors. And so make the ownership on your end to do this. So make it a priority, meet with people, go out of your way, setting up meetings with people on your team and on your extended team. Attend as many meetings as possible. Again, some employers have this a part of the onboarding experience, some don't. Ask your manager, ask your boss to go to as many meetings as possible. They may not be able to let you go to certain confidential meetings. That makes complete sense. But really try to go to as many meetings as possible just to get a better understanding of how the company collaborates and works together. Last two things really, set concrete goals with your supervisor. Some have the 30, 60 day, 90-day plan, some don't. Make it a priority to bring this to your manager and ask that it be implemented. And you take ownership of building it out. And then ask for help, especially with virtual onboarding, virtual experiences. It's really easy to not know where to go when you need help on a particular task or you're not sure who is the best person to answer a specific question. You have to be proactive, reach out, and ask the right questions. So don't be afraid to ask for help at any point in time you encounter a bug, maybe in Codebase, or if you just don't know how to submit your time card appropriately. Make sure to ask for help. Do not shut down. Really easy to fall into that trap. And we also have a bonus trick. So Angie, you want to share a bit about this?
I'll be more than happy. Yeah, well, definitely whenever you have the possibility to learn for, different languages, that is going to add a lot of value to your career. And Spanish is one of those. My native language is Spanish, actually. And I know, as it happens with many other languages, it's difficult to learn, yes, but it is important because it's going to add a lot of value to you. Also, what is going to help you do this is that, if you get part of companies like ours, which we are, globally everywhere. And for example, we have a site here in Costa Rica. Knowing Spanish, having the possibility to eventually chat some words in Spanish, it's going to help you create those bonds. It's going to help you create better relationships as well. And that is going to, make the things easier for you at the end of the day as well, which is important, is to understand that, you have to understand the cultural part of the people you are working with, because sometimes the way we treat people in Costa Rica or in Mexico or in any other country is not the same we treat people in the States, for example, or not the same way we communicate. Not that something is, right or wrong, it's just simply different. So it's important to try to take advantage of your Spanish speaking skills.
And one thing I love about this slide is it highlights that diversity at work or in a workplace makes it better. And if you're interning at a company or you're working at a company that doesn't have this opinion, it may be necessary to ask the reason why. So, a big, focus of ours at NI is we know the research suggests that diversity creates a more inclusive environment and it improves business results and employee engagement. And so keep that in mind, is that you should be interested in a company or working for a company that places that value on diversity because it makes them a better employer. All right. So we went through the 5 tips and tricks with the bonus at the end. I want to pause and I want to open it up for questions before we wrap up and talk about the next steps for each of you to be considered for some of our current openings. So feel free, unmute, or if you say, hey, Tim, I don't want to unmute because my dog is right next to me or I live next to a big road, you can chat in your question as well.
All the questions are good. There's no
bad questions. And you're talking to 2 recruiters. And so it's a great opportunity to ask about some of the tips and tricks and how to find a job.
Yeah, we are here to help you out. So everything is more than welcome.
Hi, I had a question.
Yeah.
So I actually had an internship last summer back at home, but they had networking events during the internship, just little socials and whatnot. Does NI have any events like that, whether it be networking or just professional development of some sort?
Yeah.
Great question.
Well, yeah, that's an awesome question. We do. And so real quick, when you look at our internship program globally, we aim to provide 3 things. And it doesn't matter the group that you're in. It could be R&D, HR, sales, doesn't matter. We provide these 3, what we call our core pillars. The first is that challenging, meaningful work. So no busy work, no intern-only projects. The second piece is kind of what you're asking about, which is what we call development opportunities. So the opportunity to grow not only professionally, but personally as well. And so we have lots of curriculum that we weave into the intern experience. The third core pillar is also what you were referring to, which is we aim to create that sense of belonging and that sense of community. And I refer to that as that's the fun stuff. That's the ice cream socials. That's the what we called our intern field day. It's like an intern Olympics where the teams have a battle royale, volleyball, dodgeball. Didn't do it last year because it was virtual, but we did do a virtual pizza party. And so to answer your question, absolutely. 2 of our core pillars are all about, having our interns grow both professionally and personally through, curriculum, mentorship. Every intern gets a mentor. And then that sense of community, that sense of belonging. And so that's what Angie and I, that's the most value I add, is the fun stuff and making it interactive. And Angie, of course, we've been able to work really closely, making sure that we can, meet those core pillars and do the fun stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Josh, for your question.
What other questions are there? So we just went through the 5 tips and tricks. You're talking to 2 recruiters. What questions do you have about launching your career? Got a question in the chat from Matthew. Are there any general skills on a resume that employers usually look for example, teamwork, experience, specific computer skills like Microsoft Office? I'm of the opinion, and Angie, we'll have you chime in here as well. I'm of the opinion that more general skills, I really want you to be able to call those out through your experiences. So for example, things that are, what's known as or referred to as soft skills, I want you to be able to speak to that and showcase that through your actual experiences. So I don't necessarily want you to have a portion or a section on your resume where you say, great communicator, great customer service, and things like that. Really want to make sure if you work part-time as a waiter or waitress, I want you to be able to say, I was able to efficiently, provide excellent customer service to, on average, 6, customers every hour. So I really want you to leverage the experiences to be able to share some of those soft skills and have that be conveyed. As it relates to the more technical skills like programming languages and hardware development, analog digital design, I do think it is valuable to not only have those conveyed in your experiences, but I also do think it is valuable potentially to have a section that's really dedicated to very technically oriented skill sets. Wouldn't necessarily describe Microsoft Office as something that's super rich technically, but programming languages like C, C++, C#, things like that, definitely think it's of value to specifically call that out. Angie, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, totally agree with what you just mentioned. So about the soft skills, it's better to leverage that through the experience. And that is why I mentioned that it's important to add, which were the main responsibilities that you had on that position. And that is, our job to try to identify which, possibly competencies you develop through those. Now, in regards to the technical part, also adding to what Tim just said, it is important to, make like a self-assessment and know, okay, which is the level of knowledge that I have, because it's not the same that just say like, hey, I know Excel, but I know basic Excel, or I know I'm advanced at Excel, for example. So it's important that you can, kind of clarify which is the level of knowledge that you have. Let's say like, I have a basic, Portuguese language, skills. Than just Portuguese, because it could be confusing. So better on those cases to kind of add perhaps which is the level of knowledge that you have. That will be.
Last thing that I'll say on that, and this really speaks to something I'm a huge advocate of, and I think I'll definitely add it to this presentation as we do this type of workshop a lot. Each of you, if you're not doing it already, you need to have multiple resumes, meaning you need to be able to customize your resume based on the specific position and employer that you're applying for. Now, that doesn't mean you necessarily have to say this resume is for NI, for example. I actually wouldn't recommend that, because it would be easy to not update it and say I'm applying to Google, this resume is for Google, and then the resume ends up in the NI application. I see that all the time. But I want to make sure, depending on the position and employer that you're applying to, make sure to customize your resume for that. So if you're applying to a software engineering role, of course, you want to be able to paint the picture of your programming languages experience. But if you're applying to something that's not necessarily technically oriented, maybe it isn't as important. So keep that in mind. What other questions?
Have you ever faced a difficult situation whenever you had the ones that had the chance to have an interview, for example? So maybe you can share those things, and we can, try to help you as well. We have another question from Trinity.
Yeah. So question from Trinity, what are some good questions to ask during the interview when the interviewer asks us if we have any questions? And are there any questions that are important for students to ask that we don't typically think of? It's an interesting question because I think it really depends. Hopefully, the recruiter has been able to convey a few things: the culture, the role itself or the program. Hopefully, they've been able to describe the next steps or promise that at the end of the call, they'll be able to walk you through the next steps.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't do that, they should, but don't tell them that. But you can go ahead and ask some of those clarifying questions just so you can get some more information. Another question is, a lot of employers are working towards, what we call it, this concept of customer centricity. Making sure, we put customers first, because customers are why companies do what they do. And so I personally always like when students ask about our customers, because it typically, lets me know that, they've done their research and, they're interested in learning more about the customers that we serve. Another question that I always recommend is, if you can get specific questions about what the company actually does and how they provide value to their customers, or provide value in general, that generally showcases that you've done your research and that you're interested in learning more, maybe about a new company initiative or a new product that they launched, or a new DEI target, diversity, equity, and inclusion target, maybe you saw on their social media page. So I would, of course, ask the more basic questions so you can get the information that you need. But anything that relates to company initiatives, company customers, really how the company operates, I want you to ask some of those types of questions. And then I want you to do, sorry, Angie, not to cut you off, want you to do some internal soul searching, and I want you to figure out what's important to you. Is diversity important to you? If it is, ask about diversity. If career mobility, getting promoted, moving to a different role, working on different teams, developing new skill sets, if that's important to you, I want you to ask about that. If work-life balance, you don't want to be working 80 hours a week, is important, I want you to ask about that. So really, yeah, absolutely, Matthew, thanks for joining. I really want you to do some soul searching, figure out what's important to you, and then ask those questions.
Yeah.
Angie, anything else to add there?
Totally connected to you, Tim. I was going to mention something similar. Ask what you really need to really understand the position and know if you could be a really good fit and if you will feel comfortable on that position. So that is one thing. Second, another question that you can do is something related to the values of the company, because as well, it makes that you did the homework and that you review what it means. And then another question could be, that the recruiter can explain you what a person can do to be successful on that role. What the company is expecting from a candidate to be successful on that role, for example.
Yeah, love it. What other questions? I've been loving these questions, so keep them coming.
I had another one. So let's say you're in a technical interview and eventually you come across the question where you honestly don't know what to do. What's the appropriate way to tackle that situation other than just saying, I don't know? Yeah,
so you need to just shut down and say, I don't know the answer. Can we do a different answer, a different question? No, I'm kidding. So the biggest thing, Josh, and generally speaking, this is how companies view technical questions. This is how we view technical questions at NI. Of course, we have to make sure candidates meet the technical bar. Yeah. That's a reality, especially for engineering positions, because we don't want to bring people onto the team that aren't going to, provide value, because then they're going to get frustrated and it's just not going to be good for either party. So the way we frame it is, in technical interviews, when somebody doesn't necessarily know the exact answer, or maybe is stuck on a particular aspect, we're looking for problem solvers. Angie talked about our culture earlier. One of our values is all about being a connector. And so we're looking for people who can connect the dots and be problem solvers. So I really want you to do as much probing questions to the interviewer as possible. So if you're really stuck in a particular area, I want you to walk them through your thought process. I want you to think out loud and accept their coaching and ask them questions. And they may not necessarily be providing that coaching that you need. They may just be sitting there awkwardly in silence. So you have to proactively kind of ask probing questions. And like, well, here's what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking if I, add in this, it's going to get me to here. Am I on the right track here? I'm and just approach it being a problem solver. That's going to get you to where you need to be. And hopefully the interviewer, if they don't, coach you along, hopefully they'll at least make sure to jot down that you were working really hard trying to try, and that you were coming across as someone who's a problem solver. And if you don't know the answer, you're going to work to find the solution. So that's the way I want you to frame it, is if they're not coaching you, ask for the coaching and don't shut down. Work as hard as you can to work toward a solution and be a problem solver. You can even say that. Yeah. I'm a problem solver. I want to get to this. Am I on the right track here?
Adding to what you just mentioned, Tim, it's like you said, like, don't panic, don't panic and try to be that problem solver, because we don't expect you to know every detail. We don't expect you to know everything, because we know that you're going to have a learning curve and that you have to learn many things on the way. But what we are testing on those moments as well is how would you react? For example, if you have a client on the phone and he's asking you for something that you don't have an idea. So how do you manage that type of things? Are you going to panic? Or are you going to do what, Tim just said? Are you going to start making probing questions to really understand what is the situation and say, hey, let me try to find out how to, manage this situation. And then I'm going to get back to you if it is a client, or, as Tim said, if it is a recruiter, okay, give me some ideas and let me try to find out the solution right now. I know that I don't know the full answer right now, but I know that I can make it happen. So it's more about the attitude in how you face the situation than necessarily knowing everything at that moment. It's also to be focused and be here and now and be paying really fully attention and listening to what they are saying, because maybe they are giving you some tips along the conversation that you need to grab those and then start building your answer based on that.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Love it. Absolutely. Any final questions before we move on to the next steps for each of you? These are all awesome questions. All right. If there aren't any other questions, we will wrap up with a few action items. So first thing that each of you need to do is connect with both Angie and I. And so I'll be able to chat in my link tree as well as Angie's LinkedIn URL, so you can connect with us, keep the conversation going. And then, like I mentioned earlier, we're still hiring. So we've got a few internship and new grad opportunities open right now. So if you're still looking for an internship, if you're still looking, maybe for that new grad opportunity, you graduate this semester, graduated last semester, I want you to reach out to me directly. And I'm going to go ahead and chat in my email just to make it easy, but also got to connect with me on LinkedIn. You can also connect with me on other platforms. You don't have to follow me on Instagram. I'm not an Instagram influencer, but it is there. But that's going to be the next steps for each of you. Like I said, we're still actively recruiting for our intern and new grad positions. Angie, any final thoughts before we wrap up? We close the meeting.
Well, just to let you know that it's important that you know yourself, that you take a chance to really make a self-assessment and try to understand which are the competencies that you are really strong at and which are those areas that you still need to work on. Because doesn't matter, as I mentioned, it's not important that you know everything, and doesn't matter that you need to improve on something, because at the end of the day, we are human beings. We are not perfect, But what really matters is that you are really conscious of the situation and that you are taking, actions, or that maybe you already took some actions and you are working on that and you are getting better. So really remember, it's not what you say, is how you say it. And it's really important whenever you are going to face an interview that you get prepared. Sometimes people don't make that part because they believe like, okay, they're going to ask me things about me and I should know myself. But happens that, when some questions, come along, they don't know how to answer it. And it's because you haven't had the chance to really assess yourself and then try to understand what is, some things that you need to grow still. Those things that you are just, rocking as well. So take some time
Awesome.
and, drink a coffee with yourself.
That's hilarious. Yep. You got to know who you are, and that'll set you up for success. So that is all we got. Ruben, thank you so much for allowing us to come present. Like I said, every link that we just shared, connecting with me, Angie, our 2 open positions, they are in the chat. And if you say, Tim, I want to learn more, shoot me an email.
Thank you all so much for being here. This was great. Really appreciate you taking the time and meeting with our students today.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
You
Bye-bye.
take care. Bye-bye.